All right. Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to this week's Ohio Business Matchmaker webinar training on joint venture agreements. We are very glad that you are here today. And if you're available to also participate in this afternoon's training on mentor protege, it is really a good follow-up training to learning about joint venture agreements. So this is actually the last week of our webinar training series leading up to the Ohio Business Matchmaker because lo and behold, the matchmaker is next week. It's hard to believe for us that, we've been planning this event for the last, it's a well-oiled machine at this point, but we've been working hard on it for the past 4 months. So it's really neat to know that it'll be next week. So just to kick us off today, I want to let everyone know that you can put questions into the chat, but I also want to introduce you to my colleague who will be working with us. We're working together today. She will be leading the panel discussion on joint venture agreements, and that is Shonda Harris. So you will have both of us on this training today. I will kick us off with a very technical training on joint venture agreements, and I promise I will not. I think it's important for everyone to see the regulations around federal joint venture agreements. And yes, there will be copies of the slides available after this. So that's probably one of the number one questions we get is if, are the slides going to be available and will there be a recording? Yes, yes, there will be, and a recording, and yes, the slides will be available. And that is through the Ohio Business Matchmaker website. If you go to the ohiobusinessmatchmaker.com website and then click on webinar registrations, you'll find a list of all of the webinar trainings that we've been working on since March 3rd. So if you are new to the webinar training series, don't worry about it because we do have recordings of all of our prior trainings and really this was put together to help you as a business prepare for the matchmaker, but also to prepare for doing business with the federal government. So to help kick us off, we are going to hear about Apex Accelerators from Joey Scott, who is the Ohio Apex Accelerator statewide manager. He's going to talk to us about Apex Accelerator services, and then we'll do the deep dive into joint venture agreements. Joey?
Thank you, Jill. Appreciate the introduction. So, good morning, everyone. As you heard, I'm Joey Scott. I'm statewide director for the Ohio Apex Accelerator. And if you're not familiar with Apex, appreciate the opportunity to tell you all about us. But before I do that, again, I just want to thank Jill and Shonda, for their collaboration and partnership, not just in the matchmaker, but to Apex overall. These two ladies are amazing, phenomenal to work with, and I know I'm preaching to the choir because I know the panelists would echo that sentiment as well because they both worked with Jill and Shonda over the years as well. So really appreciate them and the support of their office and the SBA overall. So real quick, because you're not here to listen to me, I'll keep this very brief. But what is Apex? We exist to help businesses with all things government contracting. I always like to put our services into three buckets: becoming procurement ready, experiencing procurement success, and staying in the government marketplace. On a front end, helping companies position themselves for success, helping you through registering in SAM, Ohio Buys, other registrations like that, helping you explore business certifications at the federal and state levels, helping you develop and refine your capability statement, and then also helping you conduct research. While we can train you on how to do your own research at federal, state, and local levels, we also have some databases that we can utilize to help aid your research efforts so that you understand what agencies are buying, how they're buying, and when they're buying. Furthermore, we have a bid match service that we offer to our clients, and that brings opportunities to your inbox based off of, like what you would do on a Google keyword search. And so all of our services, by the way, are free and confidential. In the second bucket here, procurement success, helping clients review opportunities that they found, reviewing your response to those opportunities. We're not an agent of your company, so we cannot write a proposal on your behalf, but we can critique it and help you make sure it is as competitive and responsive as possible. We can also help you understand contract clauses and requirements so that you understand exactly what you are responding to before you get too deep into it. And we can also talk strategy, leveraging past performance, turning one win into multiple wins. And then the third bucket is kind of the catch-all of staying in procurement, helping you maintain compliance in the government contracting landscape with simple things such as renewing your SAM registration annually to more complex subjects such as cybersecurity. We can also help you look at exploring other government customers. Say you want to expand beyond just DoD work or state of Ohio. We can talk through the strategy and how to do that. Joint venturing, teaming arrangements, that is a key aspect of government contracting as well. So we can help you talk through those relationships and what those opportunities might look like as well. And then on the innovation side of things, we can help you through the Small Business Innovation Research Program and quite a few other government-led innovation programs. Because we're funded in part by the Department of Defense and the state of Ohio, our federal funders like us to provide some education on a few other key areas like the ones that you see here. And then I'm just going to pause there because the rest of the slide deck, if you tune back in this afternoon, you will get to see. But I always like to end with there is an Apex Accelerator near you. So if you're not familiar with your local Apex here in Ohio or anywhere in the country, please reach out and we would be glad to connect you. So with that, Jill, I will turn it back over to you.
All right, thank you so much, and I appreciate it today to have the opportunity again to talk about the federal joint venture agreement rules and regulations. So again, I think it is important for us to talk about the regulations around joint venture agreements to give you a better understanding of how to go forward. So I'm just going to share my screen here and we will get started. So, and also just a reminder, if you have any questions as I'm going through the presentation, just put it into the chat. Shonda will let me know. And there is no such thing as a bad question when it comes to anything having to do with federal government contracting because it can get, uh, it's like a journey without a destination sometimes. It can be very confusing, but there are resources out there to help. I actually put this presentation together yesterday, so this is its debut. I'll refine it as we go, but it's also, I think this presentation gives a good window into federal joint venture agreements, and it's more joint venture agreements between small businesses, and then the we're going to talk about more this afternoon of like mentor protege. I do talk about though the difference between a joint venture agreement between two small businesses or between a small business and a large business. So there are also joint venture agreements just between large businesses, but we don't really go into that for this training today. Uh, so what is a joint venture agreement? And today we're just talking about in the federal contract space. So it's an association of individuals or concerns with interests in any degree or proportion intending to engage in and carry out business ventures for a joint profit. So essentially, we get into legalese here, but what it really means is like two businesses, two or more businesses are coming together to form a separate legal entity to combine their resources to bid on contracts together. So when you're looking at federal contracts, the joint venture agreements are actually set up between one or more, two or more entities. Those two entities will have to file like a separate EIN, a separate tax ID number, set up a separate SAM registration, and that joint venture agreement becomes valid for 2 years from the date of a first contract award. So For federal contracts, it's important to remember that a joint venture agreement is valid for 2 years from the date of a first contract award. And they are ways for businesses to combine resources, expertise, or assets to bid and win on federal contracts. Shonda and I were just part of a training about a month ago for construction and A&E firms, and there were quite a few firms that were new to government contracting, and a lot of them were like, "Well, why would we partner with each other? We're competitors." But when you enter the federal government market space, because of the size of the contracts and just having the capacity to perform on contracts, it makes a lot of sense for you as a business to think about teaming with each other. Because where you may have the capacity in one area but not another, your potential joint venture partner may make up for what you lack. So we always encourage thinking about teaming in the form of a joint venture agreement, in the form of like a prime sub relationship. We don't get into that for this training, but there are multiple ways that you can team with each other. So uh, that is, from a federal standpoint, it's a way for businesses to combine their capacities, form it, and again, it's a separate legal entity. You're forming a separate business together. And that is important to remember because you can use the joint venture agreement to bid on contracts. So the reason why I just bring that up is because there's a lot of misunderstanding between like if companies have a mentor protege agreement together, they can't bid on a contract with the mentor protege agreement. They have to form the joint venture agreement to actually bid on contracts. Okay, so this CFR reference here, that CFR 128.5, is very important. So you can depend on me and Shonda to spend a lot of time diving into the regulations on your behalf because that's part of what we do. We're trying to make sure that we understand any changes that have been made so that we can provide the best information to you. So that 13 CFR 125.8 really goes into detail about what what the regulations say, like a joint venture agreement has to contain. So my toolbar is right in the middle of my screen, so I'm going to try and move that. So joint venture uh, may submit an offer as a small business for any federal procurement, so long as the concern is small under the size standard corresponding to the NAICS code assigned to the contract. So I put that in red. When you see something in red, it's for me to to remember what I wanted to say on the slide. So uh, when uh, when a joint venture agreement is formed, uh, there has to be well, at least for the small business programs, a 51% owner of that joint venture agreement. So the 51% owner of that joint venture agreement is the concern that the certification will be based on. So if that 51% owner is 8A, is woman owned, is small, then the joint venture agreement can also bid on 8A, woman owned, or small. So the 49% owner, however, if they happen to be like service disabled veteran, that joint venture agreement can't be used to bid on service disabled veteran because the 49% owner is a service disabled veteran. So you can't have both. Like I've had several companies that ask me that recently. Like if you have a woman owned, that's one owner, a service disabled veteran owned, that's another owner, you still have to have one of you be the 51% owner. And in this general rule here, when you as a joint venture are looking for opportunities in SAM.gov, you'll see that each opportunity is assigned a NAICS code. And that NAICS code is what you will use to determine, can you go after this opportunity or not? Are both of you small under the NAICS code assigned to the contract? And if you both are, then you could form a joint venture agreement as two small businesses. So you have to pay attention to what the NAICS code is assigned to with the opportunities that you're looking for. So be strategic about the type of things that the type of opportunities you're looking for, but then also be strategic about, the NAICS codes that are assigned to the contracts. Make sure that you are small under that particular code, unless it's a mentor protege joint venture. So a for mentor protege joint ventures, the mentor protege agreement itself, having that in place, allows for the formation of a joint venture agreement between a large business and an other than small business. And then that joint venture agreement can be used to bid on whatever contracts that the protege is qualified for. So if you have any questions about that, I need to add some slides about that. I see in this section it would fit in there. So again, this is my first time presenting this, and like as you go through them and you're presenting, you're like, oh yeah, it would be a good idea to add something here or there. So um, a lot of businesses ask us if SBA has a template for joint venture agreements. We do not. We do not issue templates for joint venture agreements. We cannot provide legal counsel. What we can do is tell you here's the regulations. The joint venture agreements are based on having these key elements in them, but not limited to that. But from SBA's standpoint, this is what we want to have. This is what the regulations say we need to have in the joint venture agreements. We always recommend that you reach out to a legal counsel when you are forming a joint venture agreement, because what I go over here are SBA's regulations. They do not include any additional things that you and your JV partner want to have established. So while this is a good foundation, it shouldn't necessarily stop with just including these things. So again, 124 I'm sorry, 125.8. Uh, there's really, as you can see here, like the joint venture agreement need not be in any specific form or contain any specific conditions in order for the joint venture to qualify as small. What does qualify the joint venture agreement as being small is when the entities of the joint venture agreement are considered small businesses by SBA size standards. So for example, as I mentioned before, if the solicitation has a NAICS code of, for example, 541, 511, then the joint venture agreement would need to be small under 541, 511. And how that is done is by uh, taking the receipts of the joint venture partners individually, and as long as they are small, then they are qualified as a small business joint venture and can bid on that contract. So it is a self-certification side, like the small business size is a self-certification. It is the other federal certification programs that do require specific certification, like 8A, woman-owned, HUBZone, or service disabled veteran-owned. So this is just going along the 13 CFR 125.8. The contents of the joint venture, according to SBA regulations, they have to set forth the purpose of the joint venture. The small business or the 51% owner has to be the managing venturer of the joint venture. And there has to be a named employee of the small business as the manager with ultimate responsibility for performance of the contract. That's important. They have to be the responsible manager. So that has to be outlined in the joint venture agreement. The managing venturer is responsible for the day-to-day management and administration of contractual performance of the joint venture. They have to participate in all governance activities and decisions of the joint venture. Uh, The joint venture agreement may not give a non-managing venture negative control over activities of the joint venture unless those provisions would otherwise be commercially customary for a joint venture agreement. So uh, when you're forming the joint venture agreement, really the regulations are here, and you can build your just build the relationship around making sure you're encompassing all of these regulations inside of it. So the the individual identified as the responsible manager need not be an employee of the small business at the time the joint venture submits an offer. But if he or she is not, there must be a signed letter of intent. Like this, these details will really help you in the long run when you're submitting a proposal. Because if you're submitting a proposal, you may not have the employee on staff yet, because you will hire them if you get the contract. So what they're telling you here is what you need to do in the event you don't have that JV employee on as a part of your team yet. So it gives you direction on what you need to do in that case. So those are all important details that you'll want to remember at the time of submitting your proposal. So although joint venture managers are responsible for orders issued under an IDIQ contracts, they need not be employees of the protege. Those managers must report to and be supervised by the joint venture's responsible managers. So these, we get into a minutia here with IDIQ contracts. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with IDIQ contracts. So IDIQ stands for indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity. And those are large, usually multi-million, multi-billion dollar contracts where there are task orders issued against them. So I kept this in here because there are different considerations for joint venture agreements depending on the type of proposal you're submitting, the type of contract you're going after. So 125.8 just kind of talks about all of the different types of scenarios that you might come across. This one, this particular section here always creates a little bit of you need to have an open communication with your joint venture partner when it comes to uh, uh, how the profits are going to be disseminated between your joint venture partners. So within the joint venture agreement, you have to have, again, the small business must own 51% of the joint venture entity. And also, the small business participant must receive profits from the joint venture commensurate with the work performed by them, or a percentage agreed to by the parties to the joint venture, whereby the small business participants receive profits from the joint venture that exceed the percentage commensurate with the work performed by them. So it's very specific here, but it's also enough to be a little bit confusing if you're setting up a joint venture agreement. That is why we do recommend just having legal counsel so that when you're forming the agreement, before you've submitted any proposals together, that you have the profit share worked out between each other. The regulations have the details in here, but the execution of it, we do recommend that you reach out to legal counsel. Also, you will need to have a special bank account established in the name of the joint venture. So once you and your JV partner decide to form a joint venture agreement together, you will set up a bank account for the JV. The account must require the signature of all parties to the joint venture for any payments made by the joint venture to its members for services performed. And then I put this one in red because I've had over the years firms that really tried to keep the joint venture, but like keep expenses separated, but all expenses incurred under any contract that the joint venture has needs to be paid from that account jointly. I mean, it just any 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 contract that the joint venture gets, the funding for the contract needs to flow through that bank account that you have formed together. So again, just also within the joint venture agreement contents, you have to list all major equipment, facilities, other resources to be furnished with a detailed schedule of cost. And it goes into a little bit more detail as I was going through this yesterday, like especially in the event of an IDIQ contract, like if it's a multiple award contract over multiple years, like giving an idea of what type of equipment will be needed for like the award of task orders. Like you just never know as a business how many task orders you might be awarded. And I see some questions coming in. So, uh,
No,
Shonda,
you're
do you?
fine. You're
Okay.
fine.
All right,
No,
cool. All right. So I see a lot of it just through working with 8A firms. I see there's sometimes we gloss over the major equipment, facilities, and other resources. All of this information is here so that you're having these conversations with your joint venture partner before you even bid on contracts together, because all relationships are great until they're not. And it's usually during the performance of a contract when things aren't going the way you thought they would, that the communication can really break down. And then you can have at least the joint venture agreement to fall back on and say, hey, we talked about these things at the beginning of this relationship. So the more detailed the joint venture agreement is, the better off the relationship will remain throughout the life of the joint venture. So also what's really important is that small business, like the 51% owner, needs to be involved with the negotiation of the contract, the source of labor, contract performance. So again, the purpose of like a small business joint venture agreement isn't for the small business just to be, and I say again, but I didn't mention it in this presentation. The SBA's intent, like for joint venture agreements, is for the businesses to be working together equally, not for one JV partner to be just the JV partner in name only and not really performing anything other than really basic things. So uh, the, the JV, like the 51% owner, should be involved in the negotiation of the contract, the source of labor, contract performance, all of those things. And it goes in, so if a contract is indefinite in nature, those are those IDIQ contracts I just mentioned. So that would be like think of GSA schedules, like Oasis Plus or GSA Mass, the multiple award schedule. Those they can seem indefinite in nature. Uh, so it's saying if you don't know the scope of work, the joint venture must provide a general description of the responsibilities of the parties. So it can be really tempting, like if you are submitting multiple proposals for the joint venture, to just do a blanket modification to the JV, but you really should be sitting down as partners every time to really mash out who's going to be doing what and when and how. Just to keep those lines of communication open. In the also in terms of financial records, the financial records for the joint venture need to be housed with the 51% owner of that joint venture agreement. So, and also the small business managing venturer should also be filing the taxes on behalf of the joint venture, the financial statements. Like if it's an 8A joint venture, then your business opportunity specialist will require that you submit financial statements for the joint venture as a part of your annual review, because we need to determine your size at the time of your annual review, and we need to take the joint venture revenues into consideration, especially if you're receiving 8A contracts through that joint venture agreement. So um, we do need to get, so stating the annual performance of work statement must be submitted to SBA and the relevant contracting officer no later than 45 days after each operating year. So yes, if it's an 8A joint venture, we want to get the tax returns and the financial statements for each joint venture agreement you may have, because you can have more than one joint venture agreement at a time. So uh, uh, and here's another very important section addressing performance of work. So, and again, this is where it's always good to have like a legal counsel review your joint venture agreement so that everybody is on the same page with this. So, um, I go to like, again, 13 CFR 125.8, C, which is performance of work, and then 1. Uh, so for any contract set aside or reserved for small business that is to be performed by a joint venture between a small business protege and its SBA approved mentor, the joint venture must perform applicable percentage of work required by 125.6. And 125.6 is another really important regulation. That is the limitations on subcontracting. So for joint venture agreements, a small business partner to the JV must perform at least 40% of the work performed by the JV. So while it sounds fairly simple in this regulation, it is anything but simple. And this is where I think when we see joint venture agreements like it would go sour, it could be with this performance of work. So uh, uh, just just to give you, hey, here's a heads up of things that you need to look out for when you're forming the joint venture agreement, because it isn't just for that moment that you're forming the JV agreement. You're forming a partnership with each other. So you want to make sure that your performance of work and then the profits from the relationship, that they're pretty clear as you're getting into it. So the work performed by the small business must be more than just ministerial functions. So that is there because we want the small business partner to the joint venture to be growing and learning from this experience. It's really difficult to uh, get your first federal contract or continue to get federal contracts, and having a joint venture partner, or just another business that can provide their wisdom to how to build capacity from a business development standpoint, so that you can start performing work on your own without having a joint venture agreement. So again, the amount of work done by the partners will be aggregated, and the work done by the small business protege partner must be at least 40% of the total done by the partners. So I think that's helps to give a little bit more detail on how SBA will look at that division of performance of work, and should assist in when you're forming your joint venture agreement. So the certification of compliance. So prior to the performance of any contract set aside or reserved for small business by joint ventures by protege small business and mentor, must have a written certification to the contracting officer in SBA, signed by an authorized official of each partner to the JV. So this would be if you are in an SBA mentor protege agreement and you have formed a joint venture agreement with your mentor, and you're submitting your joint venture agreement on a proposal. So these are the extra details that you have to provide the contracting officer, so the contracting officer can know that this is an SBA approved mentor protege joint venture. So these are actually updates to regulations that are going along with the changes to the SBA mentor protege program and how SBA approves joint venture agreements, which, we don't approve joint venture agreements anymore, only for 8A sole source contracts. So a very small percentage of the contracts that are out there require SBA to approve in advance. That's a result of a regulation change, I think, from like 3 years ago, maybe four. But SBA no longer approves joint venture agreements for 8A firms or 8A contracts, with the exception of sole source contracts. So the SBA is not reviewing them in advance. We used to have legal counsel review that we don't do that anymore. So that's why that rule is there, like here. So because the contracting officer now has to do a level of vetting for joint venture agreements. Okay, so another important section is capabilities, past performance, and experience. So a couple years ago, it really came to the forefront, like when a joint venture agreement is submitting a proposal, uh, how does the contracting officer evaluate past performance on a joint venture agreement when the joint venture agreement itself may be new, it may not have any past performance. So it has a section on 125.8 that talks about that. So when evaluating the capabilities, past performance, and experience, business systems and certification of an entity submitting an offer for a contract set aside or reserved for small business as a joint venture, established pursuant to this section, a procuring activity must consider work done and qualifications held individually by each partner to the joint venture, as well as any work done by the joint venture itself. And I will tell you that is very important to joint venture agreements, that the parties to the joint venture, that their past performance is also considered, because otherwise, like I said, if it's a brand new joint venture, it's not going to have past performance. So this regulation says that procuring agencies have to consider work done and qualifications held individually by each partner. So that is definitely a step in the right direction from kind of the conversations we had around that before. The past performance of all parties to the joint venture should be considered when going through the evaluation phase. Okay. So a procuring activity has discretion whether to require a protege or lead small business member of a joint venture to demonstrate some level of past performance or experience. So that's telling you that it'll be like on a proposal by proposal basis on how they look at the small business experience to the joint venture. It may rely solely on the past performance of the mentor or non-similarly situated joint venture partner, or it may require some level of past performance or experience of the protege or lead small business member. Where it requires some level of past performance or experience, the procuring activity shall not require that firm to individually meet all of the same evaluation or responsibility criteria. I'm telling you, this update is addressing a lot of challenges that small businesses experienced, especially with the increased use of the IDIQ contracts, because like the past performance requirements to even submit a proposal can be a barrier to entry. So having this regulation update really allows for joint venture agreements to become more competitive, especially if they're new joint venture agreements, because the experience and the capacity of each individual entity of the JV needs to be considered. So this just foot stomping capabilities, past performance, and experience. If a procuring activity requires a protege or lead small business joint venture partner to demonstrate some successful performance or experience on fewer previous contracts of lower values than required, it shall be rated equivalently to successful performance by the mentor or non-similarly situated partner. So it's going into like when a proposal is being, like a joint venture proposal is being evaluated, like how the contracting officer will look at the past performance of the joint venture agreement. The partners to the joint venture in the aggregate must demonstrate the past performance, experience, business systems, and certifications necessary to perform the contract. And that is also wonderful because it means that when you're submitting a proposal, you need to demonstrate as a joint venture, like the entities to the joint venture, how are you going to work together? And how do you have the past performance experience together to perform the contract? So really, that's in the other regulations that I think because I didn't want to kill us with just regulations. So I put the link to ECFR here. But again, we spend so much. I spend a lot of time on ECFR. That's just what gets me up in the morning. Is just going on to ECFR and looking at the regulations so that you don't have to because it's funny because when I started with SBA, we just had the book versions of 13 CFR that would come out on an annual basis, and you would have the book and look it up. But now, like ECFR, like it updates like daily almost. So if there's any changes, you can just immediately go in there. I'm not saying it's easy to find the changes, but you can look in real time when there have been changes. But I put 125.6 in here because that is important for all of you outside of joint venture agreements, just in federal contracting in general. This is the limitations on subcontracting. So that talks about, if you're a service related industry, you have to perform at least 50% of the contract. If you're construction, you have to do at least 15%. If you're a specialty trade contractor, you have to do 25, but you can partner with similarly situated. Anyway, I didn't put it all in there because like it's a lot. So you can just go ahead in your spare time because I know you would love to just go look up ECFR. Either that or you want to go to the FAR site. That's equally entertaining. Um, Again, the SBA does not provide templates for joint venture agreements. I will tell you, however, like you want to make sure your joint venture agreement includes those provisions that we just went over. Okay. Uh, it, but there's going to be additional things you want in there to make sure that the line of communication stays open and everybody is on the same page with stuff. Because you don't know when something's going to go wrong until it does go wrong, and then you can fall back on the JV agreement and say, "Oh yeah, I remember when we formed this relationship, we said we were going to A, B, C, D," right? So it's all written out. And Again, like sometimes if you're brand new with working with each other, it might be worth your while to just partner together on a job together. Partner with a smaller job together instead of like immediately diving into like GSA Mass or Oasis Plus. Like, why don't you just do a smaller contract together to see how everything works out? All right, and that's it for the joint venture agreement. I just included a couple of these extra slides. As you can see, like here's one. We just transition into one that like is much prettier because our SPA headquarters like did the market like the formatting for that. But I know all of you that have participated in these trainings the last couple weeks, we just, we try and encourage you to do market research to find out what federal agencies buy what you sell, find your niche. Their competition is fierce, but it's not impossible. Like if you know what you're facing and you create a plan, like you've got this. Understand areas of government spending. Like that's Joey gave the introduction to Apex accelerators at the beginning of this presentation. They are wonderful in helping you understand how the government buys, where they buy, and so forth. And also, if you're able to attend the Ohio Business Matchmaker next week, definitely do it because you'll have so many federal, state, and local, well, not as many federal agencies this year, but state and local and city and county agencies will be there to really help you understand, hey, there's a fit for you in this agency or there's not. So, um, again, I kept this on here because they talked about consider subcontracting with joint ventures in the mentor protege program, which seemed really timely with what we were doing. So that is my presentation. And this is my contact information. And if you have any questions, you can always send me an email. Shonda is also equally versed in joint venture agreements. And so we are here to help you. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jill. And somebody has given a hand clap.
Thank you.
And thank you. And we recognize there may be a variety of small businesses that have joined us today. And so a lot of great information about joint ventures. And if you do have any questions or you want more information or are interested in forming a joint venture, maybe with a potential small business, you can definitely reach out to your Apex Accelerator. You can also reach out to one of us, but we can get you on the path to start making that hopefully a reality. And we probably should have done, I told Jill yesterday, we probably should have done the mentor protege program first, kind of as the stepping stone, because that's kind of the tools to help with your business development, to help you gain capacity, to help you strengthen your core competencies, and then the joint venture would be next. But hopefully you were able to gain a lot of information, and we are going to take what Jill provided, and actually that is the information about what is a joint venture. And so you heard the specifics in the background and detailed information about how it works. But we're going to hear from some small businesses now on a panel who have actually been in a joint venture relationship, also talking about teaming. So you may not necessarily be in a joint venture or want to jump into a joint venture right away, and that's okay. You can do a teaming agreement where someone can be the prime and another company can be the sub, and then you can also partner together to work on projects in a teaming relationship. So we do have a panel today, and I am going to get us started, we are going to just allow the panelists to introduce themselves. So if you want to go ahead and Pavan, Al, and Kaylee come off. Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today. And again, the whole essence of these webinars is to assist you as a small business, to get you ready for the matchmaker. We want to make you as best prepared as possible. So having a combination of the information about what is a joint venture, how it's formed, to having someone to explain, and somebody that's been there and that's done that and has utilized the joint venture to gain contracts. So with that, we are going to allow our panelists to introduce themselves, maybe take about 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes to introduce your company, say a little bit about yourself, and then we will jump into the questions. Now, I do have a list of questions which I sent to our panelists, and we will utilize those. But as we go along, if you do have a question, if you can go ahead and type it in the chat, and then we can probably go ahead and interfuse your questions with the questions that I have. But we are going to, since we have one female today, we are going to allow Miss Kaylee to go first, and then we will hear from the gentleman. So Kaylee, you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Kaylee Lebo, with Protective Coatings, or PCI, here in Dayton, Ohio. We are a small business, and we do a lot of contracts out at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and we've done a lot at DSCC in Columbus, GSA. We do general contracting, where we will, be the prime and do the whole project and subcontract it out. And then we also do self-perform all of our own painting. And that's actually how we started, was painting, and then grew into prime contracting.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, Kaylee. We'll go next with Pavan.
Yes, hi. Good morning. My name is Pavan Mehra. I'm an architect with PM Architects. And we started out in the 8A program around 2010, something like that. We were very fortunate to win some contracts directly on our own initially. However, what changed for us was our introduction to the 8A program and then participation in the 8A program and then winning long-term 5-year design services IDIQ contracts. That became our launching pad. And by the time we graduated, we had prime contracts, in different ways. As a designer, as most of you know, you can go after either the design contracts or you can team up with a construction company and then you can join their team and do design build contracts. So with that being said, nowadays, or including in the past, we have held IDIQ design build contracts from Detroit Arsenal up in Michigan. We have had contracts from Shaw Air Force Base in South Carolina, Marine Logistics Base in Albany, Georgia, Robbins Air Force Base in Georgia. And very recently, we also picked up 2 new contracts within the last few months. One of them is from Kansas City Army Corps of Engineers District. The other one is from Charleston, South Carolina District. And I'm sure there's some more which I'm forgetting, but it gives you an idea that once you get into the 8A program, and if the Lord is kind to you, hopefully you will end up winning a lot of contracts and it will take you to the next level. And that's the whole idea. That's the whole idea. Then by the time you graduate, you should be in a position to compete on a full and open basis, which is where we are right now.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Pavan. And Mr. Al Wolford.
Thank you. Good morning. And I am very honored, happy to be here, be part of this panel. I thank you. I am the president founder of CDO Technologies. We're an IT systems integrator headquartered in Dayton. And I want to also applaud SBA for the Mentor Protege program. My history with the 8A dates back to the 1990s. I had this conversation with Shonda one day. And so I have seen the evolution of the program over the past 35 years, 35, 40 years or so. And I'm only 19. So so I applaud SBA. If you go back and look at the history of the 8A program back in the 90s, a lot of the companies, they didn't have the Mentor Protege program back then. And if you look at the history, a lot of companies, once they graduate from 8A, they tend to tail off because you have prime sub type relationships. And that was, I want to say, prominent back in the early 90s doing the 8A program. And during that time, I was part of the program with another company. So I started CDO in 1995, and we were 8A. I think we graduated in 2006 or 8. So we've been out of the program for a number of years. We, as a lot of companies in the technology field, we compete on a variety of different types of contracts across the country and even internationally with the federal government. And we pursue, what we call ANAS contracts. We also we do a lot of cyber work. We do a lot of network infrastructure work. And we routinely compete on opportunities that are, 8A. And so what we have, the mentor protege arrangement, and we, over the years with CDO, we probably have had 6 or so that we've had in place, and numerous joint ventures as a result of those mentor protege agreements. So we've had great success with the program, with the mentor protege program, as well as the joint venture program. And again, I want to applaud SBA for that, because I think the program over the past 30 years or so has certainly evolved, where companies like us, we can continue to participate and thrive, and also work with 8A companies so that we can share our knowledge with them as far as how you engage with the federal government.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Al. And I do want to have a disclaimer because I know all three of our panelists were formerly 8A companies, and they mentioned that. But just a disclaimer, you don't have to have the 8A certification in order to have a joint venture. We just so happen to know these individuals in their firms and that they've had a lot of experience with joint ventures, teaming agreements, and thought that they would be great for the panel. So just wanted to throw that disclaimer out because all three of them referenced it. But as you can see, they do have a lot of experience and a lot of exposure utilizing teaming agreements and joint ventures. So we'll just kind of start off just to ask, how did you find, and I know that you've had several maybe joint venture agreements, maybe you're still in some now, but maybe an example of one or two. How did you find your joint venture or teaming partner? Let's just say maybe for your first joint venture. How did you find your first joint venture partner, and what are some of the tips or suggestions that you can give to our small businesses that may be interested in entering a joint venture relationship? And whoever wants to go.
I can start out with that.
Great.
Without the mentor protege and joint venture agreement early on, I don't believe PM Architects would have won the contract that we did at that time. The scale of the projects was completely, beyond my comprehension at that time. However, we had a very good partner to back us up, and the way in which the couple of lead people from PM Architect that we worked, we were the face of the joint venture. We were the face of the company. So we led it from the front, and that gave us a lot of respect, on the government side, and that helped us win additional task orders within the IDIQ umbrella of the contract. And that gave us significant experience, which gave us the flexibility to pursue other opportunities in other ways, and we became successful there also. So going back to the start of this, particular question and the response, Shonda, that you asked, without this joint venture and mentor protege that we got early on, I don't believe we would be where we are right now.
Great. Thank you.
It's a godsend program. Let me just say it this way. It's a godsend program.
Thank you, Yvonne. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with that.
Thank you.
So for us, I think we've had mentor protege agreements for some time. Like I said, I think it goes back to 2008, 2009. And what I have learned over the years, and what we look for, in our first relationship, first of all, I think a lot of it is relationship. I think it's important to get to know the person, the owner.
Good.
And so what I felt was important is that I got to know that owner. I got to understand the character, understand them. They got to understand me. It was I also, we wanted to establish a win-win type of a scenario. I think was the second thing I looked at is, we wanted to be, reciprocal where, both parties benefited. And so those are some of the first things that I look for. And then after the relationship strengthened, we pursued opportunities. But I think, for me, it was establishing a personal relationship as best I can. And the person, and also the other, the protege establishing a relationship with me in terms of how we operate to make sure that, our business values, I'm going to say, are consistent. So that's what's important for me. And that was one of the first things that we looked at. And we found our first mentor protege endeavor. Actually, the company is about 3 times our size right now.
Oh,
with
wow.
and so we went into a relationship with them, and happy to say that I think all the companies we have worked with over the years, since that time, since our first MP um, agreement, all those companies have grown to be very nice sized companies. So I think that what we did is we wanted to make sure that I had a good business relationship with that other owner, and that I think trickles down and allows you to establish a working relationship that is tight enough where if there are challenges, you pick up the phone and you resolve the challenges. So that's how we approach it, and we have approached it through the 5 or 6 that we've had over the years. I hope that answers the question, Sheldon.
Oh, that's good. Thank you. Yes. You had a lot of good feedback, getting to know the owner, establishing a win-win, wanting to have a win-win for both you and your joint venture partner. And I think one of the most things is that personal business relationship, developing that first. Kaylee.
So we've had 4 different joint venture agreements, and we met our joint ventures from working around them on other projects like job site visits, job walks. So we kind of had seen them and out in the field, been around them, and then started the conversations about if they would want to join some joint venture agreements. So that was ours, working around them, seeing them out in the field, different job walks, and that's how we met our partners.
Awesome. But I think that kind of goes back to what Al was saying, is that business relationship. And so if you're working around them, and just to put a little bit more context, because again, we'll be talking about the mentor protege program in the afternoon, but essentially if you're a small business and you're looking to gain entrance into the federal market and start to do federal government contracting, a lot of times you may not have that federal past performance or past performance with the government, and sometimes gaining that may be hard. And so with the mentor protege program, it does allow you as a small business to gain capacity, grow your capacity, grow your capabilities to win government contracting, win government contracts through partnering with more experienced companies who are the mentors. And so those more experienced companies could be a small company, it could be a large company. And so what they were just explaining is, hey, they've gotten into the market and they're looking to go after a lot of times larger contracts. And if you don't have the capacity to do that, then joining forces with a mentor and then entering into a joint venture gives you that opportunity to do that. And so those relationships are definitely key. And I think you can hear that in the thread through all 3 of our panelists, Pavan, Kaylee, and Al. Kaylee, I see you just came off. Did you want to add something?
No, I was
to
just
that?
getting ready for the next question.
Oh, okay. Okay. She's ready for the next one. So with that, relationships, those developing those business relationships, which is definitely key, what are some tips or best practices on how to maintain a positive business relationship with your joint venture or teaming partner? You can share some recommendations on maybe what to do, also what not to do. And also if you have a story that maybe you would like to tell of an experience of something that happened. But what are some tips, best practices on how to maintain a positive relationship? Because I think that's key once you've met with someone and have that win-win, and give some recommendations on what to do and what not to do.
So we had 2 recent joint ventures that were awarded projects. So we had 4 altogether, but 2 were never awarded any projects, and then 2 that were awarded projects. The biggest between the 2 partners, one was great and one was not as much. So the biggest thing is communication. So with the positive joint venture is having that communication, and we have at least a weekly meeting that has been set from the very beginning on Fridays, and we stick to that meeting and we just catch each other up, even if it's just real quick, 5 minutes, but communicating is the biggest part of that, and making it a set schedule, and that you're open and have that communication with each other. And then also just like being open and being honest. Like if you're bidding a project and working on it, if you're not comfortable with the pricing or you're not comfortable with something that's going on, don't hesitate to make sure that you have those conversations with your partner that like, hey, I'm not really comfortable with this. Like am better with this kind of pricing. So that would be my two things, is communication and just being honest, and don't hesitate if you have a concern about something.
Okay, great. Love those points. What about a couple of things, what not to do, Kaylee, that you would recommend?
I guess what not to do is on the other end of that, right? If you're not talking to each other, if you're not having the communication all the time, as the majority owner, just always being aware of that like you can't let a larger company try to decide everything, because that's just not how the
Say that that is
partnership
important.
so important that even though you're the small, you are the majority owner. So just keeping that in mind when it comes to decisions and on stuff, like you have the most important voice when it comes down to it, and you can't let a larger business push you around just because they are larger than you. You are the majority owner. So I guess I would really just keep that in mind too.
And that is, I'm going to add a little bit of additional information on that one. That is so key, especially as small businesses, and you're entering in a joint venture. And a lot of times it's like a marriage. You're entering into a marriage with another company, and you may be small. That other company may be other than small, or that's what the government terms it, but it's essentially large. That company may be large, or they may be more experienced, but they still may be a small company, but they may have more past performance than you. You really don't want to, and we've heard, I think everybody on here has heard negative stories about how those larger companies, just because they've had access to contracts a little bit longer, they may have the relationships in the industry, and they want to dictate everything that goes on in the joint venture, to say, you're going to do it this way, that way. But I think it's important what Kaylee said, is to definitely make sure that you voice your opinion, that you speak up, and you don't allow that your joint venture partner or that large firm to dictate everything in the relationship. Great points, Kaylee. Pravan or Al.
I agree with Haley also, but let me give my perspective in addition to that, and then let the participants decide for themselves. We had a situation early on in our joint venture where the large business companies, personnel, employee, whatever we want to call, he ended up calling the government COR, contracting officers representative, directly. I don't think he meant anything bad. He was just looking for a quick answer, and he thought he could just pick up the phone and give them a phone call. However, that did not go well at all. Within 2 minutes after that phone conversation, my phone rang. And that COR told me, Pawan, this is your contract. You are the 8A. You are the 51, just like Haley said. If I ever receive a phone call from anyone else, keep in mind, I'm the one who's going to do CPAS or past performance on your contract. Do not forget that. Verbatim, that's exactly what he told me. In other words, he was trying to say, Pawan, take control. This is your contract, take control, manage it. So I never let that thing happen again. It was a very delicate situation. I was caught off guard, but it happened. So I apologized. We had a team meeting after that. And like I said earlier, he did not mean anything wrong or anything bad. He was just looking for a quick answer, quick fix, and move on. He did not mean anything wrong. But these things can go sideways very easily, very quickly. The key is communicate, 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 and do damage control ASAP so that these things do not happen. And after that, life was good.
Well, I agree. I agree with everyone, what everyone is saying. That for me, my experience, there has been, I would say transparency, and mutual respect and understanding and shared expectations from the business arrangement. So I think that those things have, over the years for us, has been pivotal for the joint venture mentor protege relationships we've had. We haven't had a lot, in terms of having distribution of funds, especially when you get to um, the issue of dollars and cents and distribution of funds from the joint venture. Transparency is very, very important. So I would say that, and shared expectations in terms of what one company brings versus the other company. So I think those things are important, and I do agree with the other panelists and what they shared.
I think sometimes the perception is in the mind of the large business that they are the ones who have the experience, they are the ones who have the manpower, and we have been doing it for 20, 30, 40 years. Who is this small little company who's going to come in and boss us around, for the lack of a better word? But it's a very delicate balance. They can be right in their perception, but you have to figure out how to navigate through that very, very carefully, without hurting anybody's feelings. So
Great advice and tips, all three of you. And I think one of the things that we like to do with this panel and all our panels is prevent or provide our small business and those that have joined today with a good perspective about not just the joint venture, entering into a joint venture partnership and going after contracts and hearing all the wonderful stories, but then also hearing some stories where maybe things didn't go as planned, they didn't go as well. And there are maybe some horror stories, but out of those, sometimes that can provide the best learning opportunity and the best teachable moment for you to kind of grow your business and go from there. Let me ask, do you remember winning your first government contract through one of your joint ventures, through your joint venture or teaming relationship? And if you can briefly describe a few key factors that help contribute to your success in winning that award.
So I can volunteer. You said in winning that award.
Do you remember winning your first government contract through your teaming?
Yes. So I remember
agreement or joint venture.
Yes, I remember this loud and clear. During our shortlist interview, we had a very good proposal because PM Architects had, somewhat of a portfolio before that. But our large business partner, they had been in business for 100 years. Of course, they had a lot more. So overall, our package was very good. Our SF330 proposal was really good looking. So we were shortlisted. During the interview, there was one question where they asked, the contract was from the southern half of the country. They said, we get hit by storms on a very regular basis. We get tornadoes, we get thunderstorms, we get high wind. So if we have some kind of damage to any of the existing buildings, you are on our contract. What will you do to help us out in a very, very short amount of time? There were just the two of us in the room. It was a virtual interview, and I was unsure how to answer that. I just pointed out to my large business partner. I said, can you address this question? Because again, I being the, from a small business, a company, I was leading the conversation. But for this question, I passed it on to him. And he gave the answer which blew my mind. He said, sir, I am not going to lie to you. I'm not going to tell you that I will be there within 24 hours, within 6 hours or something like that, because that is not the right thing to do for me to just show up there with 5 or 10 people just because we have the manpower. yes, we have an office very close to your installation. What we can probably do is in something like that, dispatch an architect, a structural engineer to go there and see what kind of damage has taken place, assess the situation, work with you and discuss what is a priority, where your operations need to continue to work, what can be delayed, what we can do 6 months later, something like that. So we will just dispatch a couple of people over there. We will come back, regroup, and within a week or something, after further conversation with you, we will come up with a game plan and dispatch whatever comes out of our joint conversations. But if you expect for us to send 10 people over there the next day, no, I don't think we are going to do that. And I don't think I could have given that answer. He was very honest.
Yeah.
He was upfront. He was not rude. He did not say anything inappropriate in my mind. Right there, I had a very good feeling. Man, we have nailed it. And that's exactly what happened. Within a month after that, in my inbox, I had the contract. So
Awesome.
that's my take on it. Oh, there was one more thing. They checked up on PM Architect's references also. Based on the project that we submitted, you submit 10 projects to them. For those who are in the AE business or construction, they would know these things. At random, they called up some of my CE people. And I just happened to have a meeting with them on a different local project. When that meeting ended over there at that installation, he asked all of the other team members in the room to go to the next room. He took me separately into his own private office. He asked me, did you submit to this installation on an IDIQ? I said, yes, sir. I said, but how do you know? He said, I received a phone call yesterday. I said, oh, crap. What happened? He said, don't worry about it. I took care of it. So fingers crossed now. So I had two very good situations, which worked out very well. So yes, Shonda, I remember this loud and clear as if it happened yesterday because it was a very good day.
Well, but I think talking about going back to those relationships, the importance of maintaining, that great relationship with your partners, teaming partners, or those that you've worked with in the field, and how that can be important as it relates to the past performance.
Yes,
and
because you don't know who they're going to call to check up on you. You never know. So you cannot mess up anywhere, and you should not. Nobody should.
Yeah. Kaylee, great. Thank you, Pavan.
So I think the one that really sticks out to me is we got a multiple award contract at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And when we were working on that proposal, and ours is a mentor-protege relationship, but when we were learning to work on that proposal, we all went down to Megan's office, and there was so much that I personally learned through that experience because I had never been through that big of a proposal and putting it together. So for me, it was like just a huge learning experience on how to do proposal and how much work goes into it, and sitting down with them. So getting to win that project and really being a part of it and like learning how to do that. And now I can do it on my own. That was like the biggest thing I remember from like when we were awarded that contract, is just the process and just really learning how to do it.
And Kelly, I have found out in my experience that these people on the government side, they're very, very smart people. They can see through you. They know that you are a small business owner. You are not going to come in, with very, impressive, for the lack of a better word, shining, pictures or this or that or something like that. They know that. And they do, in all trueness, they want to help out small businesses also. So when they see that this company, this person has what it takes to do it, we should give them a chance. They really do. They really do.
Great. Before Al goes, again, I see Joey put in the chat. If you do have questions, again, I do have questions that I can ask, but we are really doing this for you. So this is good to kind of kick us off and get us going. But if there's a burning question that you have, a question that maybe has baffled you, some challenge that you have the panelists here. Please type it in the chat as we go forward. I just don't want to be the only one that's asking questions, but definitely go ahead, put your questions in the chat. Al, do you want to chime in?
During our early years, a lot of our contracts that we had, they were transition contracts early on in our journey. In other words, they were 8A contracts that we may have had that transitioned to the joint venture partner. And I think what I recall are some of our major high points were establishing those execution expectations that the client has. So, I think for us, it's making sure there's mutual understanding in terms of what that customer expects, because in those cases we had experience in the past. So I think early on in our journey, sharing those execution expectations and relationship expectations stand out to me, and I think it allowed for success in execution of those programs.
Great. And what do you remember? What was it? A federal
It was a federal,
contract?
yeah. There were contracts at that time at Wright Patterson, and they were technology support contracts then. And I think making sure that the expectations were established into what we knew the customer expectations, how we understood the customer expectations. And I would say that we had success over the years. Now, later on, those agencies acquired the same services on a broader scale. In other words, the government consolidated stuff and you had to go compete on it. But I think early on for us in our relations, for initial relationships, I think establishing that what we felt that customer expectation was and sharing that with the joint venture partner.
Great, wonderful. Thank you, Al. Looks like Matthew Barrio has a question. Great question, Matthew. At what point did each of you seek legal advice when entering your joint venture? Did you seek legal advice when entering your joint venture?
We did in our relationships. I think it's important to make sure that, again, it starts with the relationship. Okay.
Yeah.
That is where it starts. It's being comfortable. And I think so that you are comfortable, I think it's always a good strategy to have to understand what those legal, I'm going to call them elements are of the agreement, and that you are happy with that. So, and an SBA has a lot. You can only do what the rules allow you to do, right? So I think that part is very important to make sure you are comfortable there with going into. So I don't think it's a bad idea. I mean, the rules are the rules. I mean, Jill talked about that earlier. The rules are the rules.
Right.
You know what those are, but I don't think it ever hurts. I think it's an investment that I think early on you'll learn from. If you do it once, then maybe next time you don't have to do it because you'll understand what the legal ramifications are. But the rules that Jill covered earlier are the rules, pretty much, and that's what we have to live by.
Yes.
We had our JV agreements checked just from the very beginning to make sure, legally everything looked correct. We also, like, our bonding company also has a legal team, so that was something that also ran through the bonding company, because they wanted to approve it and make sure that, PCI was protected. So they also had like their legal team look at it also. So that's kind of what we did.
I think in our case, the large business company that we were working with, that we had the 8A joint venture with, they had an in-house counsel. He was doing all of the legal checks and stuff like that. And we were following SBA template. So I did not hire anyone for legal additional advice. No.
I'm glad you brought that up, but we don't have the templates anymore.
Yeah, I was going to say.
That's what I heard in your talk, Jill. I did not realize that. Yes.
No, we used to provide them, but we don't anymore. But I think that is a good point, Pavan, especially if a small company is entering into a joint venture relationship and it may be a large company or a more experienced company, and they may have a legal team. They already have templates. They already have done this before. I always recommend to our firms, and I think Haley said, to protect your company, to protect your interests, and
Right.
especially the day and time that we're in today in 2025.
Yeah.
I strongly recommend that you do seek legal counsel to protect your interests. And I think both Jill and I know, and I think all three of our panelists know of someone who probably have entered into a joint venture relationship and it didn't go well.
Oh, yeah.
And if you don't have that, somebody's clapping. I've worked with a couple firms, and if you don't have a good, solid agreement, again, that protects your interests, and also I want to throw in this caveat, I would strongly recommend that you use a government contracting attorney, one that understands federal government contracting, especially if you're going after federal government contracts. Please, I strongly, highly recommend that you use a federal government contracting attorney, because they know how to navigate waters, and they will look at an agreement, and really both parties should have legal insight and legal assistance, because you want to make sure that that agreement is going to represent your best interests and it's going to protect your interests, just in case that joint venture agreement doesn't turn out the best and it doesn't go as anticipated or as expected. Phil McLean, who is one of our PCRs, Procurement Center Representatives, is on the webinar with us, and he shared his thoughts. Definitely speak to legal counsel. He's sharing, if the partner is in a different state, great point. Each state has its own laws for business entity registrations, great point. So I, again, would recommend that you definitely want to use a government contracting attorney. And if your business, your joint venture partner is in another state, that is also another additional things that could make the joint venture, make it a little bit more complicated. So you definitely want to have somebody that knows how to navigate in those waters. Great point. Thank you, Phil. Thank you, panelists. But at the end of the day, it is a business decision, but you definitely want to make sure your interests are covered.
Shonda, if I may expand on that, please.
Go right
That
ahead.
was then. Nowadays,
Right.
since we are doing a lot of simple joint ventures or teaming agreements based on the design build contracts, all of these contracts are reviewed by our legal counsel also. So at that time, we followed SBA template.
Okay, gotcha.
So I did not do it, but nowadays, absolutely, they are being reviewed.
Right, and it was a different time. Great point.
That's correct.
For those of our small businesses that may be on, and again, continue to put your questions in the chat. Those that may be on and maybe they are looking to enter into a joint venture relationship, based on your experience, what would be a good time for a small business to enter a joint venture relationship? And let me add this. Do you think, would you recommend that they do a teaming agreement first before they enter into their first joint venture agreement? Do you think that they should enter a teaming agreement, maybe on a smaller project, before they do a joint venture? Or what would you recommend, especially if this is their first time?
So we have not done teaming agreements, so I can't really speak on that part of it. But for the joint venture side, I would want to say, like, you need to know yourself as a company first, like what your values are, just in that part, your pricing, what you're capable of doing, before you enter into a joint venture. So again, like, if there ever is a problem or anything like that, like, you're strong enough to know, like, this is right or this is wrong. So that would really be my suggestion, is like, you don't want to do it too early on in business if you don't really know where you're at, I guess is how I would say it.
That's great. So knowing your own company, where you're at, your own capabilities, what you can handle at the time. Okay. Al?
You know, Shonda, I think for me, a lot of it depends on where the company is in their journey. Yeah, it's again, it goes back for me. It goes back to the relationship. You know,
Mhm.
what I try to do, what we try to do is we try to look at things strategically and say, okay, if I'm going to, here's my business plan, here are my pursuits or my targets. Who do I need to partner? What do I need in order to achieve those goals and objectives in terms of winning those jobs? And then we look at our partnership arrangement, and we go back and we look at relationships that we have, because success is what we are trying to attain. So for
Mhm.
us, I would say that, the joint venture route, we try to make sure we've got relationships already in place, especially when those procurements come out that we can't get to.
Mhm.
It's always good to do teaming arrangements all the time, but for those procurements that we try to be intentional, if
Mhm.
that makes sense, in terms of our pursuits and our business arrangements with the 88 companies. Yeah, it's always good to do teaming. We do teaming agreements all the time with other firms, but a lot of it depends on where you are in your journey.
It's good.
I don't think there's anything to be afraid about it as far as a relationship is concerned, unless you don't know anybody and somebody wants to do a joint venture with you and you have not built a relationship with them. Again, I
Mm.
think it goes back to relationship and trust, and
Yeah.
establishing that level of trust.
Great point. I'm sure definitely wouldn't want to enter a joint venture relationship going after a large contract. And you don't know that company. Maybe you've heard of them, but you don't know what they represent. You don't know you may know what they do as far as the services that they provide, but knowing kind of what the essence, and see if they have the same makeup, the same structure. Do they represent the same, not just capabilities, but have the same alignment as your company, Pavan?
So let me address it slightly differently. For those companies which are already in the 8A program, their clock is ticking. They have 9 years to stay in the program.
Mm-hmm.
So it takes you a few years to get federal contracts. It does not happen overnight. You may get lucky and get something quick, but it may take you 1, 2, 3, 4 years to get, a few projects. But since your clock is ticking, if a large business approaches you to do a joint venture, mentor protege, that's your ticket. It does not happen very often where a large business approaches you and offers you a mentor protege joint venture. So if that small business at that time decides to do a teaming agreement, you might leave your opportunity, and soon after that, you will be into your 5th or 6th year of the program. And at that time, you cannot take unlimited sole source contracts, and you're already on a downward trajectory. So consider those things. At what point, just like Al also said, where are you, in your, program career at that time? If it is right to invest or spend more time to do teaming agreement, or you want to take a leap of faith, do some homework, talk with people, and then see if you can directly jump into a mentor protege or not. Most people that I know who have done mentor protege joint ventures, whenever they were approached by a large business, I do not know of even a single company who declined that offer. And I know quite a few. So
Let me ask this, Pavan, using that scenario. So let's just say somebody is on their journey and this opportunity does come for them to pursue a larger contract, IDIQ, MAC contract. There is a large company other than small, and you're not familiar with that company. What steps would you recommend that small business take to get to know this company, to build that relationship, to build that trust, like in a short period of time? Here's the opportunity. They have maybe it's a year and a half, 2 years down the road, but what steps would that small business need to take in order to get up to speed, to build the trust, get to know the company? What do you recommend that they do? And that's
My
Pavan, and then also
recommendation.
Kaylee and Al.
Okay. My recommendation would be to trust your peers, because it's a small world that we live in. We always know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody. I would begin to call my trusted colleagues, my friends, who might know somebody who knows that company. I would approach it like that and just do some kind of, very quiet investigation, or, like, for the lack of better words, some research, I should say.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
all of these contracts is public knowledge. You can go and do some research on your own and see what have they won and done in the past. It's all public knowledge. Nothing is hidden.
That's
So
true.
I would start out with that, and then, make a decision, meet with this company, definitely. Then you will get your own, different vibe at that time. If the vibe is good, the feedback you're getting from your colleagues is good, why not? It's worth a shot. Otherwise, your 9 years are up. You may never get that offer again.
Great recommendations.
Hey, Shonda, one
Yes.
point, Pavens, I agree with everything you just said. I think my addition here would be, make sure you understand what's in that team agreement. Okay. In
Mm,
our world, there are a lot of language. You need to have a clear picture of what you're signing up to. In other words, I'll give you an example. So in some of our team agreements, we've had firms that'll say, well, I need your capabilities, but I'm going to give you, the only work I'm going to give you is in this particular functional area, or I'm going to give you up to 20% of the work or 10% of the work, right? In our space. Well, up to means a lot. You have to understand that's a broad,
mhm.
that can be 0 to 10, 0 to 20. So when you're going into a relationship on a teaming basis, you want to make sure you're clear on the language that's in that teaming agreement, and make sure you have clarity and looking at what you're bringing to that arrangement and what you're getting out of it, if I could put it that way. So I think in making sure that you understand the language in that teaming agreement. Over my years in the business, we've had good ones. I would say for the most part, we've had good ones, but I've had to check and make sure I know what I'm signing up to. And we have some that gives me comfort, and even some that they don't always give me comfort. Okay, but I know where I stand, if that
Okay,
makes sense.
great feedback. Kaylee, did you want to add something additional?
I don't know on this one that I have much to add about it, because we've not really been in that situation. We've known all of our partners, or who we've been, I don't know, there's a couple that maybe have approached us, and I haven't really felt like the connection was there, or that we were gonna benefit out of it, that I haven't pursued. But I guess what Pavan said, like, it just has to be the right, I guess, vibe, like the right, to me,
Mhm.
the cultures have to go together, or
Absolutely.
you're just gonna have problems from the beginning. So if someone's approached or said something or sent an email and I've looked it up and I'm just like, I don't think this is gonna work. I'm just not really risky in that, I guess.
No, I think that's great. Definitely. Same culture. Make sure that they are integrable like you, and how they operate. But I think one of the things, going back to what Pavan said, I know I recommend to my firms that I work with, both Jill and I work with 8A firms in our portfolio, is I give recommendations on some things that you need to do. I always recommend with my firms, I want to meet your joint venture partner, because I do research as well. But I always recommend, hey, get information. What's the word on the street about this company? Small businesses will tell you. They will tell you. So as Pavan said, those small businesses that are your partners, those that you are credible, those that you've done business with, those that you respect, ask around, and they'll tell you. They'll tell you the good, bad, and the ugly. They will tell you what's really going on with that company. So definitely, especially if you're in that position, want to do your due diligence and ask around. And also, Pavan, would you say asking maybe even an agency. If you had a good relationship with the Corps, a contracting officer, a specialist, maybe asking them about a particular company and getting some feedback about from maybe a government perspective, an agency perspective.
Yeah, we have done that, and some good things have come out of those. But then, it just depends if they will feel comfortable enough to say something along these lines or not. That again, like the other panelists also said, goes back to the relationships and the trust, if they open up or not. So it remains to be seen. But at the same time, how many of these small businesses have connections on the inside with the government? Who are they going to go and ask if they don't have a contract?
That's
So,
another good point.
yeah.
Another good point. All right. I think this is definitely worth asking because I think it is in reality something that every small business is going to face at some point or another. Have you ever experienced a major setback in not just your business, but actually in a teaming or joint venture relationship? If so, how were you able to navigate and address it? And then I'm going to ask, hey, what lessons did you learn from that? But was there a major setback or a major challenge that you faced in a joint venture or teaming relationship? And then how were you able to navigate and address it? And what lessons did you learn? They're thinking.
Okay,
For me, Shonda, I don't know. I think that I can't say all of have met all my expectations, but I would say that they've come pretty close.
Okay.
And there have been setbacks.
Okay.
There have been setbacks.
How
Personalities.
did you deal with it? How did you handle it?
We sit down and talk. Like I said, for me and for us, it has been relationships. When I go into it, especially if we
Right.
are the mentor, that relationship building for me is very important. That upfront, when there are issues, I want to have the ability, and I do it today. A lot of times I'll call and I'll say, well, if you need my support or help, then let me know. Let's talk or reach out. So I think it's doing the upfront work. We've had setbacks like any firm,
Mm-hmm.
but I think in dealing how we approach those setbacks, for me, it's through communication. And we had one relationship where there was we had there were some things that happened that in terms of personnel that we had to address. And I think tension got a little high. And for me, what happened is we eventually got back to the point where we were able to resolve the issue.
Okay.
But that came from communication.
Okay.
And the business relationship turned out to be one of the best we've had.
So it helped prepare you for greater success in winning contracts, going back and working out those issues through communication.
It's all about it's trust, communication, it's a relationship. Somebody talked, we talked about culture and making sure you get a good feel of what, establishing that culture that you may have and what that other company has. I think those things are so important. That due diligence up front is just so important to the success of a business relationship. It's not always perfect, okay, but it's very important.
Right. And I think that was Kaylee that said that about the communication earlier. And Kaylee, I think you have something that you want to add.
I want to say, like, from the first one that had been awarded a project, it started out really good, and then the other partner pretty much went silent after that. So that's what I said, like, learning from that one has made the current joint venture that we have a lot stronger, and making sure that we have that communication and ongoing So I guess like from that setback, I mean, just being silent and stuff like that, we've learned that like we don't want our next partner to be in that same situation.
Now, what, if you don't mind me asking, what did you do when that partner went silent? What did you do, or were you able to get past that hurdle and at least regain some communication? Maybe it wasn't the best or wasn't as open, but were you able to finish out the project?
We did finish all the projects out, but like on our own. I mean, again, as a 51%, you know, a lot of that was, and we could handle it. We did it on our own. I think just, I see things too. Like I know that person had a lot of personal things going on too, and I think that played a lot into her situation. But we were able to carry all of it and still get it done and everything. But it's just, we did learn from that partnership.
So it was a teachable moment that helped you with the next relationship that you entered in.
And the next one has been great. I mean, just wonderful. We've learned a lot, and you know what it is to be a true partner in it.
Awesome. Thank you. Pavan.
I don't think I have a whole lot to add on to what Al and Haley just now said. The key is basically to find happy medium whenever you have a tough situation and find a way to move forward, you know. So that's the best I can say, you know. Nothing is perfect like any marriage. It is just another marriage, that's all. And we have to find, you know, sometimes we back off, hopefully somebody else will back off next time, but always find a happy medium, and things normally work out.
All right. Are there any, we have about 10 minutes left. Are there any additional questions from our participants that are on the webinar? Definitely want to make sure that we don't close out. And if you have a burning question, definitely want to make sure you get that answered. So go ahead and type that in the chat. So for those that are on, and if they're typing in their questions, great. But as we get ready to wrap up, I think I may ask one additional question, and then we can give your final remarks. So, what tips or suggestions would you give a small business and maybe their first joint venture partner is a large company and they haven't had a teaming relationship and they're going to enter into other than small business or a large company, and they're going to enter into a teaming agreement for that first joint venture that they're putting together? What recommendations or suggestions would you provide to small businesses?
One quick comment I could make here, if you don't mind. I don't think small businesses should expect the large business to do the work for them.
Great point.
You have to lead from the front.
Great
You have to
point.
lead from the front if you want to earn their respect and government's respect.
Great point. Great point, especially small businesses that are navigating and looking to jump into the federal market. And they may think, somebody just clapped their hands and they may think, oh, I just need to get in a teaming agreement so I can win my first contract. And I can rely on, especially when you enter into a joint venture relationship with another company, if you don't have past performance, that joint venture relationship takes on the past performance of both joint venture parties. So the joint venture will be able to claim the past performance from that large business. But as Pavan said, you don't want to just rely on that large company and their past performance, their experience. You do have to bring something to the table. Kaylee, did you want to jump in and add some additional points to that?
Just like Pavan said, I mean, they have to value that you have value to add, not just because you're a small business, but because you have the skills, your own past performance, the own connections, like they have to still value you as a company and not just seeing you as, oh, what am I going to get out of this as an 8A, or joint venture agreement. And I think one thing that kind of stands out to me with this is like at one of the matchmakers, someone had suggested, lead with what your company is and what you have to value and what you have to offer. And then say, oh, by the way, I'm an 8A, or oh, by the way, I'm this. Like it should not just be what maybe certification you have, but that you still are valuable as a company and have skills and everything ahead of that certification. And the same thing when going into this agreement, like you have those skills, you have that value, even though you're small, and just like making sure that they understand that you have value.
Excellent point, and especially as what great way to enter into going into the matchmaker next week, Kaylee. Lead not just with the joint venture partner or entering into a joint venture relationship, but as you prepare for the matchmaker next week, you always want to lead with, as she said, who is your company? What skills do you have? What capabilities, what core competencies does your company provide? And then maybe give, oh, okay, I am a small business. I have a Hub Zone certification. I have a woman-owned. I have an 8A certification. Never want to lead with those, but you want to lead with the strong skill sets or capabilities that your company has, and the value that you can bring, not just to your joint venture partner, but to that agency, to that contracting officer, to the project that they have. Al, did you want to chime in and add something to this?
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add other than I just hope that as we evolve, that these programs continue to evolve as well. I think, again, it's back to someone mentioned earlier about value. Understand your value. You're bringing your certification, you're bringing something to the table. You have value. Not only that, what you do or what your company does, and there's value. So understand your value, get clarity on your value, even if you don't have a lot of past performance.
Right.
Understand your value. And then the next thing I would say is from a legal perspective, whether it's teaming or whether it's joint venture, make sure that you at least go through the process of getting legal input on these agreements. Make sure that you understand what you're signing up to. You may not get all the terms you want in some teaming agreements, but you'll at least understand what you have and understands where those gaps, if there are gaps, and what those gaps are.
Great. And I'm going to answer this question, and then we'll allow each of you to give like your last 2 minutes of advice, suggestions, tips that you want to leave with our participants on today's webinar. But Sheena wanted to know, what if you don't have past performance, as Al was saying, on your capability statement? So essentially you're new to government contracting. Do you have to be an 8A certified company to be in a joint venture? Great question. No, it just so happens, I don't know if you were on at the beginning when we started the panel, I gave a little disclaimer. All three panelists are graduates, 8A graduates. So they just happen to be in the program, but you do not have to have 8A certification in order to enter a joint venture. You don't have to have any certifications. You can just be a small business and enter into a joint venture. The 8A certification is just an additional tool to those that are qualified, that are economically and socially disadvantaged, that qualify for the certification. It's just an additional tool that they can add to their arsenal that will allow them to have access to those set-aside contracts. But you don't have to have that in order to enter into a joint venture. But if you don't have any past performance on your capability statement, then probably one of the first things that you want to do is gain past performance. And you may want to do that even before you look at government contracting, is looking maybe locally, doing business at the local level with your city, your county, municipality, maybe with the state, maybe doing something in the private sector. You can build your past performance that way. You can work with Apex Accelerator. And then once you do have some past performance, doesn't have to be government, then you may want to start looking at doing business at the federal level, Sheena. All right, so to wrap up, we want to give our last 2-minute closing remarks, and anybody can start. Whatever tips, suggestions you want to leave our participants with as they prepare for next week's matchmaker, and then also if they're looking to enter in a teaming or joint venture relationship. Anybody can go.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Now everybody's jumping in.
You had us
Why
all.
don't we do
You
the
had us
same
all on
thing,
the
ladies
spot.
first?
Put us all on the
Like,
spot.
Okay, we can, since we started off with Kaylee, we'll end with
Okay,
Kaylee going
all right.
first.
That's
Okay.
Good
fair.
gentlemen, thank you.
That's fair.
I would just say it's definitely very worth it to have the joint ventures. For us, it's really helped with our past performance, growing as a company, learning different skills that we didn't know before. I mean, we've had a great experience with it, even with, some of them being a little rocky. And like I said, 2 of them we applied and got was a joint venture, but we didn't get any awards out of it. But it was still all very worth it. It's very worth it to go through the process and learn about the process. And I guess always if one doesn't work out, don't let that be like, oh, I'm never doing that again. Keep trying, because you will get ones that work out. There's always good and they're bad. So don't let one discourage you.
Awesome, thank you so much, Kaylee. Yvonne?
So my 2 cents worth, for those companies who are already in the 8A program or who are planning on joining the 8A program, I'm sure you know, but for those, somebody who does not know, 8A program gives you the ability to get sole source contracts from government without any competition. There is no other program that I'm aware of which will give you that advantage or that edge. So for those, once you get into the 8A program, you have 9 years. After that, you get kicked out by either Shonda or by Jill. I'm sorry.
It's the program
Just joking.
criteria. We
Just
don't kick you
joking.
out. It's the program criteria. You
So-
graduate.
You graduate. Yes, it's the program. That's how the program
Right.
is. So
We don't set the rules.
we don't set the rules. Correct. I was just joking. For the first 4 years, I believe, Shonda, if the rule is still the same, you get unlimited sole source contracts.
Right.
After that, the moment you enter the 5th year, the percentage of sole source contracts begins to go down every single year. So
Correct.
you have a golden egg in your basket. Please make sure that you position yourself for success before you even join the program. Or if you're in the program, you want to hustle. You want to hustle. Don't expect for somebody to come to you and give you work. Hustle. Go and put yourself in front of the contracting officers.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
Al?
I would say my 1 cent would be make sure you got a good solid business plan,
Good
uh,
point.
that you understand the rules of the playing field that you're about to embark on. In other words, especially as it relates to federal business. Who's in that space? Who's doing it?
Mhm.
When the contracts come up, understand that. Also, try to surround yourself with a mentor if you can, somebody that can help you navigate and understand. I want to say the ground rules that and how it works, because all that learning will help you craft your business plan in terms of how you plan to approach something. And from there, you've got to build relationships that align with your culture and your values of doing business. But you got to understand that in the technology space that we operate in, it's very competitive.
It is.
It is very competitive, and you got new people coming in every day. A
Mhm.
lot of them come in and they have expectations that, oh, wait a minute, that's not how it works. So really understand the playing field you're about to embark on as best you can. The players, the acquisition how they buy, how the government buys, traditionally have bought for those types of things. And I think that that can help you, and make sure you surround yourself with good legal support. I think those things can help you navigate, especially in the tech space,
Mhm.
which is so crowded and so fast, as far as the federal government is concerned. But those would be some of the things that I would say, that you want to make sure you have. And if you're 8A, you only have 9 years. I think somebody Vaughn talked about it early. So I tell people before they that are considering 8A, go through that learning process I just talked about,
Mhm.
before you get in the program. Okay. If you got to establish a mentor, establish it now, learn those things. So when you get into the program, you're not taking 2 or 3 years to catch up.
Great.
Yes, yes, very good point.
Great point. Again, thank you so much to all three of our panelists, Pavan Mehra, Al Wolford, Kaylee Lebo, for joining us today talking about joint ventures. And then also to Jill Nagy Reynolds, my counterpart with the SBA, giving us an overview about the joint venture, what a joint venture relationship is. So hopefully you've gained a lot of insight and valuable experience via the three small businesses, and it will prepare you for next week's matchmaker, which if you haven't signed up, you definitely want to sign up because we only have a couple of days left. The link is in the chat. Thank you so much for joining us. We're looking forward to meeting you next week. We have one more webinar at 1:00 today. So if you haven't signed up, you still have time. You can go to the website to register, and we will be talking about the Mentor Protege program, both DoD and SBA. We will be giving an overview and also having a panel discussion. So you're welcome to join us. Thank you so much for your time today. Have a wonderful day. We'll be back again at 1, and we look forward to seeing you at the Ohio Business Matchmaker in Dayton at the Nutter Center on April 23rd and 24th. Thanks so much. Have a great day. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.